everybody, hope you're doing well. I know this might be a little bit of a shock. I know my hair is shorter, and well, that's because I kind of mentioned this. My videos over the course of this last month had to be recorded in advance because of how long my winter break was at college. So I was editing them while I was on the road, that kind of thing. So I hope you enjoyed those. But as I got back to college and was getting unpacked, I saw a huge announcement. There was going to be a Life is Strange live stream that was going to show once and for all what Double Exposure 2 was going to be about. And the little comment about them wanting to separate rumor from truth or something along those lines, I thought was funny, especially since I have been covering a lot of the possible leaks and things like that. So I hope that means they actually watch my videos and know I've been, snooping around trying to figure things out. But anyway, while I was in the middle of class, I couldn't help but pull up the live stream and I watched the trailer with subtitles, and then I went back and, watched it with sound. And I was astonished to see what was correct from the leaks, what was not correct, and everything in between. So without further ado, let's go into my impressions and my thoughts on Life is Strange Reunion. I need to get the elephant in the room out of the way first, and then I can kind of go through the trailer as we were shown things and read my first impressions. Obviously, Chloe is back, and like we said, she was not being voiced by Ashley Birch. She was voiced by the actress Rihanna from Life is Strange Before the Storm. Now, this might be a controversial take, but I really enjoy Before the Storm. I understand it has its problems, but it was a very, very impactful game for me at the age I was when I played it, and I really, really like the performance that Rihanna gave for Chloe Price in that game. I thought she did a fantastic job picking up this character that we all know very well at a different point in her life. The return of Chloe is a whole can of worms for various reasons that I'll get into a little bit into this video. But initially, I was excited and also kind of like, I don't want to say nervous, I want to say more so cautiously optimistic and a little confused about how they were going to explain this away and what her function would be in the story. The game's plot, at least on the surface, appears to be another, kind of basic Life is Strange plotline, at least for Max, where it's like, hey, there's a disaster that Max needs to use her powers, whether it's flipping through realities or going back in time, or some sort of tragedy, and she needs to go back in time to stop it and figure out why it's happening and try to prevent it. I do think it's interesting that they chose a fire, especially with Rachel's connection to fire. I'm not saying they're going to bring Rachel Amber back. That would be ridiculous. If I have to eat my words when the game comes out and Rachel did return and they did some weird stuff like that, then I don't know. But the one thing I will say is if that's the case, and if they bring back a lot of characters and it's really awful, at least they went full out with it. I said before when we were talking about the two different directions that the franchise could go in terms of Double Exposure 2, that I don't want them to go halfway. If they're gonna go ridiculous with like bringing in the Avengers and having different characters meet and do all this stuff, I want them to go all out because at least it'll be fun and you can kind of laugh at it if it does go that far. If it goes kind of halfway, you're just thinking to yourself that this isn't all that good. The thing I like about it being a fire is that, and we've seen a couple of clips of these people in masks throughout the trailers, I believe it's opening the door to the Abraxas Society actually doing something, which I'm very thankful that they are possibly going to use the Abraxas Society in this plot, as I made a whole video where I was going to do a deep dive into them, but upon doing my research and looking around the game, there was really nothing all that interesting about them. There wasn't nearly as much detail in the lore that there was about something like the Vortex Club. And not that they need to be exactly the same. This is a point that I made in that video, but not that they need to be exactly the same. I really hope that the Abraxas Society is expanded and works in a way that feels more like a college and has some sort of lesson or thing behind it that relates to a college student. Maybe the Secret Society can sort of represent more of an extreme frat or an extreme situation that a college student might be put in. I think there's a lot of things that you can say about a young person's experience in college through a secret society. So I really hope they end up doing something really interesting with that. One thing that caught my eye, one thing that had me really nervous is when Max is saying, "We're gonna need help," and then the camera starts like fading in, and I thought, dear God, we're gonna get like Alex or all these people from different parts of the different games. And then it was Safi, which, I'm glad to have her back. I thought her performance and her character was interesting enough in the first game, but I think it's odd that, especially with how things are left off, that one of the two choices at the end of the game related to her is telling her, I can't forgive you. And yet she's just gonna waltz right back in. And don't people have merged memories of both timelines? So wouldn't that mean that her mother knows that Safi tried to kill her, or that Max did when she shapeshifted, or whatever it could be? So that just makes it interesting how they're going to, have her return and be on campus if these memories are merged from these two realities and these two, the events of that game, and how when the realities merged, all these people went through the horrible process of the two things, the two memories converging. So then we get introduced to Chloe again in the trailer, and the thing that I do like is that she's a playable character. I'm glad that she's returning and having a bigger role than just being there to talk to Max and being a love interest. Having her as a playable character, especially with Backtalk returning, and according to a friend of mine, someone who's been a great source for these videos, they brought back one of the writers from Before the Storm to help with the Backtalk and help those reactions and interactions feel like Chloe. So I thought that was, I thought that is a good sign, at least when it comes to her. Chloe seeing visions of Safi is strange, and there's a lot of Chloe questions that I have, but I'm going to save those questions and the sort of spitballing part after we get done going through kind of the main things that we can just outright see. Later in the live stream, they have Hannah and Rihanna talk about how your Chloe could be alive if she died in your timeline, and they show a little clip from the game, and it makes enough sense, the two realities combined and that merged things back. But then they mentioned that Arcadia Bay is still around. And I get it, because two timelines are merging. Chloe is from the timeline where she lives, obviously, and so she comes over, and then they find out, Arcadia Bay is back, and it's a big surprise for her because she just watched it get destroyed. And then for us, people like me who chose to sacrifice Chloe are like, she has memories and now the town is back, but she is here. So will Chloe being in a timeline with Arcadia Bay being around, will that mess with things? Max's rewind power is back. I'm fine with that. I really enjoyed the two realities power. I thought that was a fun thing, but it was clunky at times, and there were less ways to make it fun and interesting for puzzles than I think time traveling, because what it would devolve into in double exposure is just, I need a ladder to get to the top shelf. Flip over to the other timeline. Moses has a ladder. I need to get Moses away from the ladder so I can take it to the other time. It would just devolve into going back and forth, going back and forth. With the time travel, there were a lot of fun things you could do in Life is Strange 1. Now, do I think that this new team will handle the time travel just as well? That remains to be seen. We will see if they put as much attention and detail and little background things that happen with the time travel as there were in Life is Strange 1. So that's pretty much the basics of the trailer and what's going on. So basically, to summarize, the game is about a fire that occurs. Max uses a photo to travel back in time and has to figure out how to prevent it before it happens. And Chloe shows up because of the two realities merging, and Safi is still there and kind of helps out from the sidelines, I guess. The Abraxas Society is somehow still involved. And I guess Max is going to be spending a decent chunk of time with Loretta, which this is more of a joke than anything. I wonder if Chloe will comment on Loretta looking a lot like Rachel, because I remember when Double Exposure first released those stills, people were like, oh my god, Chloe, that's Rachel, she's back, and her voice actress is in the game, and so that must be her, and then it just ended up being a random side character. I wonder if it would be funny to me if they made a one-off comment about that, but I highly doubt it. And so that's what we are getting into. So now, here are my thoughts and some questions I have. I am mixed on my feelings. As a fan of Life is Strange, I am excited because I love Chloe. I particularly love Rihanna's Chloe because I love Before the Storm. I enjoyed, for the, on a surface level, I enjoyed Double Exposure. I've since fully denounced my review because I didn't do my due diligence with my research. Do not go back and watch it unless you want, me basically overly praising the game because I hadn't taken the time to replay it. Since then, all my reviews, I replay the games at least twice, and I watch a lot of other gameplay videos before I give any opinions. Dispatch, Lost Records, I played through both of those twice, picking different endings and outcomes and trying things. So as a fan, I'm excited. But when I think further on it, when I think harder about, and I start to question things about the plot line and where the story is going to go and things like that, I become really nervous. And as someone who, if you've seen my Last of Us video that breaks down the plot beats of the TV show's second season and how particularly the first 2 episodes kind of fall flat because of their plot lines, I'm no stranger to writing and that kind of thing. So as that part of me, I'm nervous and I'm also a little annoyed because if they wanted to do a game where Max and Chloe reunite, have one last adventure, why didn't they just start with that? I know that they aren't backpedaling by adding Chloe. This was the plan the whole time. I've mentioned in other videos that Life is Strange Double Exposure and Reunion, we didn't know it was Reunion at the time, but we just called it Double Exposure 1 and 2 at the time, that they were a package deal. They signed on to do 2 Life is Strange games. And they had already begun production of Reunion while Double Exposure was wrapping up. So I know they aren't backpedaling, and I know they aren't trying to appease the very loud and toxic small group of fans that hated on Double Exposure purely because there was no Chloe. And I feel like I need to clarify it every time because I always get a handful of them in my comments. I'm not saying that people who like Chloe being alive versus saving Arcadia Bay are these obnoxious, awful people. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying the people who hate on the game and the actors and the writers purely because their idea, their headcanon, isn't featured within the game and it isn't exactly what they want. I think they are a little annoying and a little out of touch. That is who I talk about when I say the toxic fans. I've spoken to people who prefer Chloe being alive. I've spoken to people who prefer Arcadia Bay. And we can all agree that Double Exposure has actual issues, but simply omitting Chloe from the plotline is not one of them. So no, I am not going after all Chloe fans because of that at all. Not at all. I can't make that clearer. So all that to say, I know that this game wasn't written as an apology to those people. Because, like I said, it was a package deal. But it feels that way. Because if you wanted to do a one last ride adventure, you could absolutely just have Chloe show up out of nowhere. And the mystery is about, well, why the hell is she here to begin with? And they have to travel back to Arcadia Bay. And sure, that could be a little corny and that could be a little fan servicey, but at least you're leaning into the fan service. To set up a whole game where it's just Max on her own and then to bring back Chloe and tie it in with all this stuff, you're in a new location, feels like them saying, oh crap, we messed up because everyone hates it because there's no Chloe. Hey, look, there's Chloe again, wow! I don't know. And also the fact that they immediately and kept promoting the DLC skins, it does worry me about, the cash grab allegations that this is purely preying on the nostalgia and there isn't really a new story to tell. And that only time will tell with that. But I do know that the cat DLC in Double Exposure was absolutely a cash grab, and that was dumb. That was just plain dumb. There's a possibility that I'm proven wrong and that the story is amazing, but with Double Exposure, what we've seen, what they've tried to set up, and then this kind of hard right turn away from Max and Safi and this strained relationship and the fact that there are other people in the world with powers and the merged timelines, I feel like even without Chloe, that could have been an interesting concept because now we know all the people, we care about them a little more, even if you didn't love it, you still have something to go off of. And then you can get to the really interesting stuff of like, how do you reconcile Max's actions between two different timelines when she thought she was immune from the consequences? Things like with Amanda, how she shuts down your advances, but you can pursue her in the other timeline. How would she react to that kind of thing? And it would also play into the plot beat from Life is Strange 1, where Max is being called selfish for her actions, that her time travel and wanting to be nice to everybody and kind of manipulate people with her time travel is actually a sign of her being selfish when she talks to herself in the diner. That could tie right into that and be very, very interesting. So to include Chloe and kind of dilute from that has me nervous, and it feels like they're trying to pull at your heartstrings a little bit, but we'll see how it turns out. The other thing is I have a lot of questions about the logistics, which I know is stupid to say about a time travel game and a game with supernatural powers, but my questions are, you know, if Chloe is back and the two timelines are merged and people have all these memories, does everyone have merged memories, or is it just Max and the people she interacted with? Because we know that characters that she's close with do have the merged memories, but does everyone, or is it just because Max talked to them? And then even then, Max talks to like Safi's mom and all these other people. How come they also don't have merged memories? And if they do, why isn't this like national headlines? The other thing is, if you're a player who sacrificed Arcadia Bay, it's now just back on the map. It's just back. Does that mean that for people in that timeline, they're just driving one day and all of a sudden a town reappears on the map? It just makes me wonder, what is the scale of this? Do the people in Arcadia Bay and the people who survived Arcadia Bay, like, does Joyce suddenly remember dying in the diner and her daughter dying and calling David and going through that whole divorce? Does she suddenly remember that? Does Jefferson, who's now rotting away in prison, suddenly remember shooting Chloe and then kidnapping Max, but then not kidnapping Max and dying by Madison's hand and then not, or getting arrested at the school and getting caught? I just think that them opening things up beyond Caledon is kind of, it could be a mistake, because it might make the game too big. Life is Strange has always been a very centered game. In True Colors, it's one small town, where the history of that town plays a vital role, but it's only this area. In Life is Strange 2, yes, you travel a great distance, and it is a bigger game in the sense that there are news headlines about the characters. It's kind of it's an ongoing investigation, but the characters and the people you interact with, it's very small environments. It's a very small amount of people that even find out about Daniel's powers. Life is Strange 1, once again, the only time you leave Arcadia Bay is in an alternate timeline where you go to the art gallery after winning the Everyday Heroes contest as like a, you know, sort of fake ending where you're thinking everything's great and fine, and then suddenly reality starts to collapse in again and all this stuff. I worry it's too big because I have so many questions about the logistics, because at least with the time travel stuff, there were rules even if they didn't make total sense. Max being able to go behind a door, rewind it, and then just be there, sure, that doesn't make the most sense, but at least you know, okay, that is how it works. In people's peripheral, they just kind of notice she walks away or disappears or something like that. It's not a big deal. If you go back in time and pick up an object, it'll stay with you. That makes sense. Like, it's a clear rule. It's not like there's suddenly two objects, things like that. But when you bring in the reemergence of a whole town, does everyone in the world's memories collide? Because if it's affecting Arcadia Bay, if it's affecting Caledon University, where else is it affecting? Does it affect everyone? Or is it just people that Max interacted with? But then that brings me back to my other question. I know I'm picking it apart, and I'm sure we will get answers when the game releases, but I think when your game has a storyline that begs so many questions, you might need to reevaluate at least a little bit about that storyline. Obviously, it's too late. They're not going to go back and redo the game. That is part of the reason I'm cautious about this. With the ending choice of the game, having Chloe back, and there's some clips of Chloe kind of fading in and out of reality, I worry it's just going to devolve into save X or save Chloe, something along those lines. Because they're also, if this really is something, this merging of the timelines, if it's really affecting the world this much, where a whole town has reemerged, everyone's memories, in terms of, even if it's just in the towns, if their memories have been merged, all this stuff, then that means then I would guess that there would be some sort of great reset at the end of the game that would involve things, quote unquote, returning to normal, with Chloe, going back to whatever timeline she is from and things like that. So then that just tells me that that's exactly what, that it's going to devolve into save X or save Chloe. I think we could have a bait and switch moment with the fire. We see Moses up on the roof, and then we see this other thing, and Max might have to choose who to go after. It could also just be a setup of like, oh my gosh, people are still in the building. Friends that we know are going to die because of the fire. That kind of thing. So I don't know. I worry, though, that coming back once again to save blank or save Chloe is going to be, a little too redundant and kind of cheap. Finally, who do I think caused the fire? I have a couple of theories. The first and most basic one is that it is the Abraxas Society. You can say that, I don't know, maybe the Prescotts gave a lot of money to the school and blah, blah, blah. You could say that someone has a merged memory and so they know Max is a time traveler and for whatever reason they want to go after her. You could also say that it is Diamond. We know that Diamond has powers and that her and Safi begin to talk at the end of the game. It could be that Diamond, under the instruction of Safi, is the one behind the fire. And finally, the theory that I personally hope is true, and the most ridiculous theory, is this. Imagine it this way. If everyone in Arcadia Bay, because it was, merged timelines, that kind of thing. If everyone in Arcadia Bay suddenly remembers everything, and that would include, I would assume, Mark Jefferson and Nathan Prescott. Now, I'm not saying Mark Jefferson breaks out of prison and hunts down Max, but I think that maybe he tells someone that we know from the first game who comes back and feels betrayed by Max or threatened by Max and causes the fire. And the reason that Jefferson would instruct them to do this is because in the timeline where Arcadia Bay survives, he is just ratted out to the police. I don't think he knows who ratted him out. And if the memories merge, he will remember, I had to kidnap Max. And then she led to David Madsen. She was the one investigating me this whole time. Whereas in the timeline where Arcadia lives, she never got to do any of that stuff. She never started to investigate him, gave an anonymous tip, and pointed the police in the right direction, and that was that. And I hope that the person he sends is who I think it's going to be. Because if it is, I will look like the smartest person on the planet. If Stella, the secret third accomplice, is the one who starts the fire because of Jefferson's instruction, because he now knows for sure that Max is the one behind him being in prison, it would be the most ridiculous thing ever. But, like I said earlier, if they're gonna go ridiculous, I want them to go all the way ridiculous. You know what I mean? I think we can all agree on that. That if they're gonna go nuts and bring back Chloe and bring back this person and that person, just make it the Avengers. Go nuts. Bring in all these people. Because at least it's more fun that way. When you only go halfway with a ridiculous idea, it's not fun. So yeah, if that is correct, I would do a cartwheel if that were true. It's not going to be, because I don't think they'll go that far, but So overall, simply, I'm happy that there's a new Life is Strange game. I'm happy that it's not too far away. And I am curious to see how the return of Chloe is handled. I enjoy Double Exposure to an extent. It has problems, but it's a fine game. It's fine, and I enjoy Hannah Tell's performance as always, so I'm more than happy to get more of her. I like Rihanna's performance. I like the actress who plays Safi. So I don't know. I'm excited as a fan, nervous as a critic, and as someone who, is thinking about the details and likes to play Life is Strange games and not just look at the surface level. I like to look a little deeper. I've made a whole channel based off of looking deeper into that game. So as that person, I'm nervous because with Double Exposure, it's a good surface level experience, but then when you start to think about things, it doesn't make a lot of sense at points. So that's my overall thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm really curious about your thoughts. And also, thank you guys for commenting. I try to reply as often as I can. I do read comments. I know everyone says that, but I do read comments. And I appreciate those who do comment, those who give those long, well thought out comments. I see those, I read those. Thank you. I appreciate the engagement no matter what. So let me know what you guys think. And thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. And I hope you have a good morning or evening or, whatever.